Good morning. You get to hear me whinge about lights again. How you going? How's things? Just give me 1 second. I'm just going to make sure some of this stuff's working. Hang on 1 sec. Apologies if stuff comes through. There we go. I'm just checking some stuff. Hang on. It's all good. Okay, it's all working. Okay. I was rearranging the studio again. Laurie's here. Hello. How you going? Better time of morning, I think. I was starting to take it personally, streaming at like 3 p.m. First of all, everyone's in on their work day. Second of all, everyone's asleep. I started to tailor my streams around the UK, and they're all mad at me. All the TERFs are mad at me, so I don't know why that would be the case. So I'm going to I'm prioritizing America and Australian time zones. Something in business you need to know is that you can't do all three. It's just not possible. So you need to pick one. You need to pick the UK or pick the US and Canada time zone wise. That's just how, when you're in Perth. Sydney, not so much, but in Perth, you can't do that. Hey, congratulations. Got kid off to school. That's good. I remember those days. Where just that. I can take them to school and, I'm good for 6 hours, and then at 2:30 you're like, fuck, I gotta go get them. Or in your kids' sense, it's like 11 a.m. It's like, shit, can't start anything till I go. Anyway, I'm glad those days are behind me. My youngest is now 13. Crazy, absolutely crazy how fast this goes. Still feel like a kid myself. And I used to think my mum said that, and my grandma said that, and they go, I still feel like I'm like, and you go, yeah, sure, crazy person. Then all of a sudden, you're 43. I'm 43 next month. And then you're like, yep, okay, I get that. I'm not ready to grow up. I still haven't yet. And now I'm yelling about kids today before I even grew up. So, after school care. Oh, okay, cool. Oh, good, okay. Yeah, that's... Okay, sorry, we'll just catch up. I'm starting the Masters of International Affairs, and it's like I'm studying global geopolitics and systems, UN and all that sort of stuff, right in the middle of the war. Works really well. It's good. Actually, that'll help me segue into what I want to talk about, which is good. So hopefully the sound's okay and not too loud and all that stuff. I'd rearranged everything because I do. And I can't. I'm having to do this hobo setup where the lights, I hate lights. I have to let something go. Project management triangle. Good, fast, cheap, pick two. Okay? So good, fast, cheap. In this case, it's like lights is my drama, which is that you need either high quality lights that cost a lot of money, you need to be good at it, which I'm not, or it's like you got to spend money. And also it's that sort of balance. I've talked about this before, the balance between lights and lens. So I've got a kit lens, which means I need better lights. If I have shitty lights, I need a better lens. And I can't afford either of those two things. So it's just like I'm fucking constantly tinkering with things that don't fucking matter because you got to get your website done, Taya, which is almost done. But it's not almost done in the live sense, but it's almost done in the back end, and then I can just skin it, which is good. So anyway, a lot of back end work to build a community. I think you might be surprised to hear that, and also learning management. And again, it's one of those things, unless you're prepared to spend thousands and thousands of dollars, you have to develop it from scratch yourself or use certain things. It takes longer. That's a lesson. That's, as far as principles go, some things are just gravity, and that's one of them, which is, the good, fast, cheap, pick two. Anyway, so everyone's got an opinion on Ukraine, huh? It's funny. I said this last week. It's amazing. Stop looking at yourself, fat face. Hey, come here. Look at. Stop looking at your own face. All right. It's funny how I said this. Isn't it odd? Curious, even, that the people who are expert in viruses, 2 years ago, people that are expert in policy when it comes to pandemics, people who are experts in economics and mental health, people who are experts in radicalization, people who are experts in constitutional law, and now experts in Ukraine. Who? How How do you find the time? How do you find the time to be an expert on everything? Fucking drives me bonkers. And this is the problem. There is actually a very serious issue here. And a big part of what I'm trying to get across, and, is that, is that you've got people who just share stuff and they think that their social media feed is like it used to be in, 2010, 2011, and that their opinion is not influential, their opinion doesn't have traction. That was one of those fatal assumptions or fatal mistakes that we made making these products, which was this idea of emotional contagion, for a start, social contagion, and also just how I think a lot of us underestimated how quickly the bullshit spreads and how contagious bullshit is. And a big part of this, I'm trying to appeal. This is where I have a problem with positioning, but the biggest, you've seen me working on this course, which is trying to get influencers and everyday people, because there's everyday influence as well. There'll be a small version of this course when influence isn't your business, but it's just an everyday user of the internet to be thinking about the influence that they have. This is what I keep coming back to. This is what my expertise is in, is having lived this as a crash test dummy, which is living my life, saying what I want to say, sharing my opinions on, on things, sharing my story without necessarily caring. Well, not caring, it's not the right word. Not necessarily being aware of the responsibilities that I had. And again, everyone keeps throwing around the word responsibility, but we do, which is this responsibility that we have to our friends and family. And, it's that whole, this idea that we've all become public figures in small and large ways, some larger than others, but even in a micro way, you're a public figure without training. And that's without, and again, that could, yes, the absence of gatekeepers is a good thing when it comes to information. And we've gone through this problem before with the printing press. We've gone through these problems before. I don't think that they are necessarily unsolvable problems. And unfortunately, those that are trying to solve the problems have a political agenda that is different to solving the problem. What they want is power and control and to be able to censor and all that sort of stuff. That's what we're seeing sort of figure itself out. It's a repeat of history. Nothing is new here. It's all fucking the same bullshit, same shit, different day. All right. But, so what we're seeing is people who are, and this is maybe just something that I can actually talk about, because it's something I've talked about for 20 years or something. I've gone, this is very weird. This is what my book was about. Dying by the sword, which is this thing where it's, I started the internet in one way. I used the internet in one way as a teenager who was isolated and lonely and wanted to express themselves and tell their story and, stripped of identity, all of that sort of stuff, all of that romantic stuff around the internet. And then it switched, which it became, like a really bizarre abusive relationship of sorts where it flipped. A switch flipped in the whole dynamic between me and the internet, where I suddenly had to see that the words I said had impact. the words I used had impact on others. That even if I had good intentions, I would inadvertently hurt other people. That it has impact, that the things that you say have influence, and that it, again, there's, defamation, there's all of these responsibilities that exist, and the law hasn't caught up yet. Believe it or not, the law it's caught up a little, okay, in certain areas that benefit rich people, but it hasn't, or benefit censors, but it hasn't caught up in the way that it's maybe not common sense and common knowledge that when you are broadcasting to a wide audience, that there's costs and benefits and implications and impact on that. And I think that this is sort of the problem with those that tend to be oversharers, first of all, tend to see online in the old way, which is that, you can share your shit, you can unload on everybody, and that's not going to, everyone, it's understood. I don't like using social contract because that has a specific meaning, but there's a contract there, an unwritten contract, a convention, an understanding that when you overshare online, that you're it's not a full sense of who you are, that you're curating who you are, that you are, but I don't think that that's necessarily the case. And I've learned this throughout this. If anything, I'm a perfect fucking case study in this issue. So I want to try and cut through this responsibility rhetoric, because it's not authoritarian to ask someone to care about other people. Okay? It is not authoritarian to ask people to care. It is not authoritarian to ask people to consider their actions and the impact of those actions beyond how it impacts them and their immediate circle. It is not authoritarian or censorious to ask people to do better. And I think that that's really the problem here, is that because everyone's so polarized, so tribal, so, no one's going to hear anything I've got to say because I pissed them off about one thing 6 months ago and said, fuck off, fucking whatever. That's the nature of the beast now, okay? Everyone's like, pandering to get $1 or throwing $1 to get fucking, the pandering. It's just that symbiosis, okay? I get that. I'm not dumb. I know the psychology. But there are exceptions, and there are people who get this. And there are people who are sick of this. Because I don't know about you, but I'm looking at my Facebook feed, I'm looking at my Twitter feed, and I've got people who are making very bold statements about Ukraine and Russia and Putin and all of that sort of stuff. And I know they don't know fuck all about it. I know that they could barely point to these things on a map if you put them in if you held, and you have to assume, and I'm not saying that it's all bullshit, okay? I'm saying you have to assume at times like this, given everything we know, okay, about bullshit online, okay, and disinformation, you have to, and it's like people just suddenly forgot that the American government has been lying about fucking COVID shit and gaslighting everybody and calling everybody who disagrees disinformation for the last 2 years. And then suddenly they're like, oh, well, now you say something I agree with, which we're Russia, scare the Russia. I believe you. Like, no. It's amazing how the second someone says something you agree with, you fall into the fucking line. It's like, no, I think you need to assume that both sides are it's flexing. And also when you understand the international aspects of this, which is a lot of it is flexing. And a lot of it is designed to make you afraid so that you put pressure on your politicians to act in the way. It's like, it's all fucking, like, it's all just power moves. But you're not privy to that shit, so you don't know. So what you see is, all you get is media. And it's like, are you forgetting that the media has been fucking horrible to you for the last fucking 5 years? Are you forgetting that they've been running around, like, abusing women for having objections to sort of, gender legislation? Are you forgetting? Fucking hell. Where's your fucking head at? But on the other side, the flip side to that is that some things are trustworthy, okay? Which is that you don't not trust anything either. And this is the I think the dilemma that this presents, which is also the online, I'll get to the online takeover of communities, which is that it is hard to know what is real. It is hard to know what is true. It is hard to know who's a real person. It is hard to know who's a bot. The things, it's not so much about, that's why focusing on behavior, conduct, case by case basis. It depends. And guess what that means? That means you have to fucking educate yourself and put in the work and read and do the hard shit, not just sit around fucking, injecting bullshit into your veins and reacting to everything and then sharing your opinion on everything when you don't know anything. Okay, so anyway, that's just pissing me off, because also when you actually share war proper, it's like one thing to share a fucking meme. It's one thing to share something that's, fairly benign. But what I'm noticing is that people aren't thinking about how people are going to act on what they share and what they say and what they consume. And maybe this is because I've learned this the hard way, which I have, and I've got a chapter in the imaginary book that never gets finished, but whatever. It's actually going to be rolled into the course. I've given up on a book. No one's going to pay me to write it, so I'm just going to put it into a course. At least then I can justify writing it. But which is the, responsibility stuff, which is, it's not a top-down thing to say you've got a responsibility. It's it's part of being a decent fucking human being to care about other people. It's also part of understanding, like, how you might think you're helping when you're actually hurting a problem, hurting a cause. And so sharing, I've never, well, first of all, I've never understood why people just share whatever the fuck they think on every fucking thing. I mean, I've got family that are like that. They've got an opinion on everything, knowledge in nothing, but an opinion on everything. And that's obviously, that's a personality trait. And, a number of different factors lead to that. But that's obviously not about the information. It's not about sharing information in that sense. It's about getting attention or a sense of belonging or, validation or, something like that. But I have always just shared shit that I know about. I mean, sometimes I'll get caught. The thing is that the few times that I have been caught sharing bullshit and haven't looked it up, and I thought that it was true, and then it turned out that it was a bit more complicated than I thought, it's been tremendously embarrassing because I tend to value being right-headed and thinking and not having just maybe it's just because I grew up in the family that I grew up in, with everyone having a fucking opinion and yet no one having more than a year 10 education. Maybe that was me, because I this was a whole dynamic with my family where it's like, everyone's got a fucking thought on everything. And on especially politics, when you've got I think when you do a specifically a political science degree, or something like that, where there's things that are true, but people have a lot of opinions on, that becomes a thing. It becomes a thing with people where I hear, oh, well, I've got my right to my opinion all the time. And it's like, well, no, actually, I've got a degree in it and you're wrong. And that counts for something. Knowledge counts for something. Experience counts for something. And you're just saying that you think this, well, that's fine. You can think whatever the fuck you want. Okay? It doesn't mean that you are correct. And it doesn't mean that your opinion, when you have it, doesn't have an impact when you share it with other idiots. And then, because, someone used to, what was it? It was actually an old teacher of mine said cockroaches outnumber humans 100 to 1. It doesn't mean that they're a superior life form. And it's the same thing with majority opinion, okay? Majority opinion means naught. It just means that more people, it's more complex than that, because most people don't go, more people now, but at the time, university used to be a small percentage of the population. This education, those who study political science, those who know the institutions, those who know how law works, those who know all of these things, okay, they're even more rare, okay, and also those who continue on and stay in that space and continue study into postgrad and those things, that counts for something. Okay, same thing with business. People who stay self-employed like me for all of my working life, that experience counts for something. Even if I'm not a billionaire, even if I'm not rich, because I have tried to make business work in a way that I can be happy with and live my life and not be, corporate, I've got something to share there. There's experience there. But just because, again, it's one of those things where these things count for something, experience counts for something, and this comes back to how Facebook groups get taken over because, there's a number of different tactics, and I'll go into those. I'm going to try to not spend too long on the fucking stream, but you know me, I've already, gone 20 minutes without actually getting to the point. But that's okay. Try to keep it under an hour. But this is where I'm trying to appeal to everyday people about the shit that they share. Because one thing that can solve a lot of this tension and problem and, of disinformation and fuckwits is that we make sure that fuckwits don't see things. And I'm not saying censor it. I'm saying don't help by sharing bullshit, because for me, I think maybe it's because people do tend to listen to what I say. And I know that people, as much as I moan about not enough listening to what I say, generally speaking, when I say something, people change their mind, okay? They tend to do that. I've got a rant coming about this, but I've been feeling a little embarrassed and a little bit I've been concerned that the gender critical stuff is not all that I'm starting to think that maybe I should have waited a little longer before sending people down that rabbit hole, okay? Because the people that are behind it are not necessarily above board, okay? Not in all cases, right? Obviously, there's a legitimate concern there, and we'll get that. That is linked to how these Facebook groups get taken over, because the way that this propaganda works is that it takes disinformation. Disinformation and propaganda are different things. I'm not going to go into that. Pay me for a course if you want to learn fucking information. This is a rant. The rants lead to the courses. But so there's but for disinformation, it has a specific way of operating, which is that it, first of all, usually takes a legitimate fucking fear or concern or whatever, and it cherry picks facts and it seems like it's true, but it leaves information out. So so there's disinformation and misinformation. Disinformation is the intent to share false information, okay? Or, whatever. There's intent. It's an intent. It's malicious intent. Misinformation is what I'm probably more talking about, which is people who are in good faith. There's no intent there. They're just trying to share information, but they're sharing they're sharing bad ideas. They're sharing they're misinformed. Think misinformation, misinformed, okay? And I'm focused on the misinformation part because you can't necessarily fight the disinformation stuff. They've got so many resources. Everyone's doing it. The whole world's bullshit. Power's going to do what power does. But I can focus on misinformation and some tactics. So I'm a member of a Facebook group, obviously because I've got a lot of software and stuff. Of a plugin that I use, which I find it's actually really great. Okay, it's the Crock-a-Block plugin. Sweet, it allows you to do a lot of high-powered stuff. I'm always moaning about it, but I fucking love it. It's one of those things. I love the team. I like the people. I like that they're ambitious. It's one of those few little companies it's one of those few software teams that I've become emotionally invested in. I want to see them succeed. Now they're based in Ukraine. Sorry, it's not the Ukraine, it's Ukraine. They're based in Ukraine. And obviously I'm part of their Facebook group for support in the community and, as you do with any kind of software. And what I've seen and observed is this, people still haven't figured out yet the concept of cultural, of an asset, okay, in a war, information asset. And this idea that every single community, no matter how big or how small, is of interest to those who are trying to spread bullshit, okay, especially if they've done research on the group, okay. Now I'm doing a course. This is a lot of I've got diagrams and all that sort of shit and all the theory. I'm not going to go too much into that. But what you need to understand is that if you have a Facebook group, especially if it's public, and especially if you can read through the posts and look at who the members are and all that sort of stuff, with a combination of sort of data, big data, okay, so they can sort of build these. Again, this is you're assuming that everyone does the right thing. You need to not assume that. You need to assume that, yes, while most people do the right thing and obey the law, when you don't care, okay, when you don't care about the rules, you don't care about ethics, and you don't care, it's easy to do this, okay, which is that you just suck up all the data, okay, and you do that, that was Cambridge Analytica did that with Facebook, but now they don't even need to fucking harvest Facebook. All they can do is just buy a data set from Microsoft or using Microsoft BI or any of those business intelligence tools, Salesforce, and they can just access this shit, cross-reference it with Facebook accounts. They say that it's anonymized, but if you've got enough data points, eventually you know who it is. Okay, so this person is friends with that person and that person, it's them. In that location, it's easy. It's not hard to triangulate or, de-anonymize this kind of data. So that's what you need to understand is that part. And I know that's boring, but I'm just saying it's a very important point, is that you need to understand how easy it is to achieve This is not even, again, this is not even hard shit. If you've got money and you've got money to spend and can just buy this fucking data and buy access to these tools, it's easy. This is not even fucking hard. Okay, you can do it on a credit card. Okay, it doesn't even take skill. Okay, but again, when I talk about it, and then they've got people who have skill, which is a lot fucking scarier. But we've got to start there. So what they'll research the groups. So they'll go into these groups, okay, and they'll look at it and they'll go, okay, there's a whole bunch of Ukrainians in here. There's a whole bunch of fucking people in here. There's a whole bunch of fucking software engineers. Now, what's the personality profile of a software engineer? Someone who's very black and white thinking, very capable, very good, but not too bright in the people department. A bit naive, a bit easily led, tend to be a little on the spectrum and believe the best of people, okay? That's where they do these psychological profiles and behavioural profiles. And that's why it's not just, oh, well, we're talking about politics. This is it's a very rudimentary and sort of naive understanding of how this stuff works. But if this is why I'm trying to appeal to people who run communities, who have influencers, who build websites, who run these things and, support staff, those things, so they can spot where this might go and have sort of a toolkit to manage this stuff, because it's really difficult to manage. Because also what happens is you can't tell the difference between a fucking, a bad actor and an everyday idiot. But what you can do is not be an everyday idiot as well. So again, it's one of those things where, it's a combination of things. So anyway, they research these groups. They've built a behavioral profile. They go in, and they join the group and they pretend that they're just part of the group and they like the software and they've done their research. They know what they're doing. But then when something happens in something like war, okay, you get all these like memes and shit, okay, which, fuck Putin, all of those things. Putin as Hitler and all of these sorts of things. Now, I'm not saying that's not a genuine fucking concern. Again, I'm just saying, this is where it gets slippery because there are valid concerns there. And the problem is that bad actors have become so good at looking organic that you can't really tell. You've just got to really, really monitor a certain pattern of behavior over time. And also, try not to be zero tolerance on it, because you could actually get a false positive, and there's also that risk of sort of that double down over here and radicalizing over here, and it's a very complex problem. And yet somehow 22-year-olds are fucking in charge of Facebook groups who don't know fucking anything about this and think that their little fucking bipolar community of very vulnerable people is benign, and it's not benign, because people are vulnerable, and especially at the end of a pandemic and with the tail end. I don't know if it's the end, but it's sort of let's just say we've lost interest. We're more interested in the bombs, but we're fatigued. Okay, and it's just people are pretty in a vulnerable place right now, and they're easily led, and it's just thing after thing after thing after thing after thing. Okay. And this is where, so in these groups, right, it's not just Facebook groups, it's Twitter, it's anything, which is that, this is where, so this group, right, this group that I'm talking about, I'm not singling it out. It's just it could be any group. It just happens to be based in the Ukraine. So it's actually really interesting because the fucking group admin's sharing anti-Russian memes, and it's funny, and they've gone full fucking, and that props to the Ukrainians for the fucking badass shit that they're doing. All right, good on them for fighting back. However, so he's sharing it, but also so are other people who I think might actually be people who are trying to implode communities. And again, you can't really tell, unless you've got fucking, I find it hard to tell. But the biggest thing, the best way to fight this stuff is to not share things without thinking, not to share shit you don't know anything about, to actually consider that it's not about you and your friends, but what if you share something that's bullshit for a laugh, okay? And then your friends share it for a laugh. But then that next thing down, okay, they don't understand you. They don't understand the irony. They don't get you. Do you know how many times I get fucking retweets and stuff, right? Where there's someone that doesn't follow me because I make a lot of autism jokes, as you know, right? It's just funny. University of Wollongong are offering a Master of Autism. Quality. I've been sending pretty much everyone I know who's on the spectrum a screenshot of the ad and saying, I think you could get advanced standing. It makes them laugh. It's funny. Can't believe they call it that. Anyway. But if you don't get that, do you know how many fucking stragglers who don't follow me, who don't know my son's autistic, don't know that I've, probably a bit spectrum-y myself, make fun of shit. I love fucking autism. I think it's a strength in most cases. Obviously the disability aspects are fine, but in terms of neurodivergence, and every autistic person I've ever met has been fucking, they need more support and more understanding and not a fucking, all this stuff. Getting to know people on the spectrum is one of the most rewarding fucking things you can ever do. And so I make fun of them because anyway, same thing. I have friends with cerebral palsy. I make fun of them too. That's part of the fun. Okay. Anyway. But you get some fucking idiot who hasn't grieved, who's obviously very upset that her child is autistic and thinks that it's the end of the fucking world and thinks that that's my problem because she hasn't found a way to cope with this shit, okay, in a way that's healthy. So she decides, they just show up and start telling me to stop saying that fucking word. I'm going, no, you don't get to determine how I deal with my pain and suffering and stress. Anyway, so, but it's the same thing. So it's that secondary thing. So you might not have people following you, but you might have people following what you share. And it might be like, so thinking about that down the road. The biggest thing that people aren't thinking about is the call to action that happens with this piece of content. Okay. So again, this is like course shares. I'm going to talk about that. But, like thinking about what the call to action is. So, what do you get out of it? What do you get out of sharing something like, I'm not picking on the people who did this. It's the only thing that I can think of on the spot, which is this fuck Putin thing, or the Ukrainian flag shit, or what do you actually get out of it? Like, what do you get out of it? Why? Why are you doing it? I know you don't care about these things, so why are you doing it? Okay, and this is where it's weaponized, because if you've looked at, again, Renee DeResta's work, it's a little bit kind of, US propaganda shit. There's, elements that are true and elements that are not. It's like there's the truth and the truth. It puts a glossy view of the United States politicians and how they get elected. It leaves stuff out. But the one thing she does do, okay, in her work, is point out the specific mechanisms in which they use, like, emotional manipulation. So, the fear, anger, rage. Now, they also use feel-good stuff. So this is where it's like, fucking, I quit, can't win, fucking quit the internet. But they also do feel-good stuff. And some propaganda, like troll farms and that sort of stuff, they play the long game for something like war, especially in Russia, where they'll play the long fucking game. So that and the United States are the same. They've got these places that play the long fucking game. They're not interested in the news cycle. They're interested in the fucking long game, which is what we're seeing right now, which is people are just not thinking and they're just sharing shit because, this is what's been happening for the last 5 years. I mean, it's not new. This happened before the internet. It's not really, an issue, but there's a way to not be vulnerable to this stuff. And so, but also to really start thinking about what the fuck you're doing when you're sharing these things. Okay. Because I think most people mean well, most people are good, they care, they're afraid. So, there's a lot of people do it because of, self-presentation, right? So one of the reasons why people share online, okay, this is a little bit of theory for you, self-presentation. So the things you buy, this is why you'll see teenagers do this, because when you're going through that sort of adolescent phase in development, your sense of self and identity being separate from your parents is very, very important developmentally. Okay. So, you know how like a 30-year-old who still kind of fucking loves their mummy a little bit too much, they're stunted. They're not developing. Okay. But so that stage of adolescence is very important in terms of identity formation, especially identity that's separate from parents. Okay. Now, if you set up a system where you can't move out of home, you can't afford to move out of home, you can't, you can't actually, you're still financially dependent on your parents. You can't get like a decent job. You're forced to stay at university for fucking, till you're 28 years old just to get a fucking minimum wage job. All of that sort of stuff. You kind of kept sort of tethered to your parents, and that will affect your sense of self. It will. It'll delay these developments. We're seeing this. That's kind of what's happening here. And also this idea that parents have to be friends, and like this whole millennial thing where self-esteem is like the most important. It's like that all of these things, like hang on, here we go. Let me get my face. But these I'm not going to go too much into this because my streams end up being too long and I end up waffling. But basically what you need to understand is that there's a generation there where we got it wrong. Where we got it wrong in the sense that making it so that economically you're so dependent on your parents for too long, that you're also, especially in a pandemic where you're not even going to school. Like school is important in identity formation as well, okay? Because you find groups and peer groups and friend groups outside of your family, okay? Now, there's a whole generation of fucking parents that are neurotic as fuck and don't think and don't want, their children to be, to not like them. And unfortunately, that is a normal part of adolescence where you need to differentiate from your parents. And a big part of that is pushing away from them and not liking them. So being their friend actually stunts their, again, I'm talking very simplistically. I'm not saying to beat your kids, by the way. I'm saying being your children's friend this one view can stunt their development in certain important aspects socially, okay, which is that they don't really have a strong sense of independence. Now, I'm biased towards that view because I was neglected and had, and my identity is built from the ground up on my own with no support from anyone else really in my family. So I'm biased towards that view. That's, it's confirmation bias that I'm fine, totally fine. But at the same time, so anyway, there's that part. But so this is why when things, brands, political opinions now, sports teams, identity, all of this sort of stuff, online communities, fandoms, all that stuff. That's why fandoms tend to be more intense in teenage years because of this. Because there is that pull, that pull developmentally away from, to try and find a sense of identity. And because, obviously teenagers haven't lived very long, they only have cultural stuff. They don't really have that kind of stuff to, self-present. Okay. Now, you'll see a lot. This is why I don't like libs of TikTok, because a lot of people, these kids are sort of self-presenting and they're experimenting with identity, and it's with no understanding of how fucking public it is. So let them be, let them experiment. So that's a side point. But we're always, the main thing you need to understand is that when it comes to social media is that we're always subconsciously, some more consciously than others, but subconsciously we're always curating ourselves. We're always curating our social position because we tend to be social animals, libertarians. Don't give a fuck. You care what others think, okay? All right, even being a libertarian, you're a libertarian because you want to fucking be contrary. Okay, it's part of your personality. So anyway, but we share to sort of part of that. So what it is, we're basically one big fucking social Pinterest board where we're just like, I like this, I like that, I do this, I think this, I think this, I do this, I do this. Also, we are twice as likely, I think, don't quote me on the stats, but twice as likely to talk about ourselves than anything else on social media, mostly because in an offline setting, talking about yourself is considered, poor form or whatever. Okay. So that's there's that propensity. There's also, we share to give people a sense of who we are, but we also share in order to reach out. Okay, so, when we're feeling alone, like life can be quite lonely, especially when you're going through something, really hard, especially in the real world where people really don't want to hear about your fucking crap or your dreams. You can go on and you can write about that stuff, and you can find people who are interested in the same things as you. Okay. And also, these things have, especially if you're vulnerable and you don't normally get that kind of stuff in real life, and you share stuff that is high impact, you'll find that you get a lot of social currency from your stories. Okay. And this is why, this data stuff has been such an evil fucking bait and switch. It is really a fucking, you could talk about the fucking political theory all you want. It's actually just a fucking dick move. Okay. It's a dick move to take people's secrets and take people's stories and take everything about who they are and fucking sell it back to them. It's just, like, you can talk about theory till the fucking cows come home. People find that boring, but it's a fucking dick move to do that, especially to kids. So anyway, so it gives you, but also, we also need to look at the science of what's interesting. Okay. So what's interesting is when, it's called, there's a fucking paper on this from the 1970s, and it's not many people know about it, but it's called it's something about, it attacks the taken for granted. So someone did a study on try to find a universal principle of what is interesting. And what he said was that it attacks the things that you take for granted. So it challenges you. It might be called pattern interrupt, or in NLP, or, all those things that sort of, they short circuit assumptions or, normal ways of being, and they pique your interest. They're different. They're novel. Think of novelty, right? That's what, why people share this stuff. But also, right, so there's lots of reasons why people share. And all of those things have been weaponized. See, the thing is, there's all these other, like, sort of marketing stats that come into play, which is that people trust, again, this is all just established stuff, which is that people trust I think it's in the 90s, 90% of people trust a family or friend's advice or referral more than they do the media. Now, marketers go, we could do word of mouth marketing. But you know what the bad guys do? They can say, we can use word of mouth marketing to spread our bullshit, because what it does is it fucking terminates your thought. Again, it's that thought reform stuff, thought terminating cliches, but also thought it sort of Inventing Anna, that show, Inventing Anna. Do you know what's really interesting about that show is, and I don't know, again, I don't know if it was deliberate or not, but what was interesting about her is her ability to lower defenses based on certain visual, like just subconscious signals. So her clothing, her status, the things that she was, recommendations from others. It's a really good case study in how somebody, it's not just ha ha ha, right? It is actually, there's something there in culture. So in this case, it's the culture of the 1%, that there's norms there, which is that, if this person recommends that, like if you've worked in like money circles at all, you know that you never get anywhere with a pitch deck, fucking nut, nowhere. You only get anywhere from a recommendation from someone else. It's network. It's who you know. It's got nothing to do with anything else. Okay. And so getting to know that stuff, she was an interesting case study in that, but it also applies very much to how these Facebook groups can sort of, these things can turn off your ordinary defenses, okay, because it's coming from, because, the things that you'd work through, let's say like a software community that's based in Ukraine, okay, instantly, when I talk about, how I've mentioned opposition handling in sales, objection handling in sales, okay, which is that thing where they preempt what your objections are going to be and have an answer for it already built in. Okay, so there's already a built-in answer for the sales pitch. So, you might have an issue with the price, so you offer a payment plan. They might have an issue with, it coming from a certain country. You go, oh, okay. They build in a good salesman will have good objection handling. Okay, so it's, like reputation, like it's like anything. Like if you are good at PR, you'll understand this as well. I can't remember what it's called in PR. I can't know everything, but like you've got certain anticipated moves, and then you always got a plan for how you're going to communicate and mitigate that particular concern. Everyone's got that. Okay, everyone's got a script, for if you've ever fucked up, or whatever, you've kind of got a way to like save face. That works in sales like really effectively. But this is what these guys have when it comes to taking over a Facebook group or something like that. Okay. Now there's a lot of theory here. My courses aren't like this. My courses are structured. This is more like enough to get people interested in what I'm talking about. But think about something like a Ukrainian software group. Okay. Now it's nothing against them. They're just an example in this case. Again, I'm just talking in the general. What objection handling is already built in there? Okay, well, they have legitimate grievances. They're from Ukraine. They're fucking angry. All right, let's go for it. They're on the side. Okay. It's a software. It's not politics. It's just software. It's another one. Not relevant. It's not political. Okay. And that's another myth, I think, that people don't understand is when every Facebook group has the potential for this. Okay. And this is where I think learning about cultural assets and how the CIA did this stuff in the 70s with, Gloria Steinem and musicians and, all that sort of stuff, how they infiltrated and built influence and changed and sort of infiltrated the anti-war movement, how that went down. It's very similar kind of stuff. Sorry, I'm waffling. I was thinking too many thoughts at once as usual. But so what you'll see is that there's already stuff built in. And then also what happens is, so basically I'm thinking of one meme in particular, which was that it looked a bit sus. The account looked a bit sus. And it posted a picture of Putin as Hitler. You're like, whatever, okay. In this software group. And now, so what process happens when you do that, when you go there? Okay. All right, so it's probably just an idiot. I always assume that it's more likely to be an idiot than a bot. Okay. And they don't know that what they're doing is actually politically sensitive and inflammatory. They might think they're helping and on the side of, the good guys. But the thing is, we don't know who the good guys are anymore. It's better to just stay out of it, to be honest. And I know that sounds terrible, but unless you know what you're doing, people are only ever going to see it as virtue signaling and sad and pathetic. And the thing is that if you jump from signal to signal to signal, it becomes meaningless anyway. Virtue signal to noise ratio. It's like you need to make sure that you keep that in check, because eventually, when you've actually got something to say, people will stop listening because they'll think that you actually don't fucking take the time to know anything that you're talking about. But also, so you look at this group and you see that meme. And you go, okay, I understand. First of all, okay, this is what goes on in your head. Oh, well, he's pro-Ukraine. Cool. Okay. So are they. Cool. But what these are, okay, hang on, let me think. So it's pro-Ukraine, and also it's a software company. It's benign. But this group has just gone nuts. Group's gone nuts. It's gone nuts with fucking political shit. And the thing is that you can't tell, because some of them are like, I support my people in Ukraine, I support that, but they look very kind of botty, all right? And they look kind of troll farming. It's just really interesting. And it's really hard to, again, a lot of this is instinct, and you can't tell whether it's just a person being an idiot or an actual fucking troll farm. And that's a big part of the problem. But that's why not sharing things that do these specific things is so important, because you might just be a mule for bullshit. So anyway, they share this sort of this Putin as Hitler kind of meme. Again, I'm not going to argue with the sentiment. I think all evidence points to the fact that this guy's fucking off the rails. However, if you don't know, which we don't, because we have state-controlled media just like anybody else. Okay, we don't know. Okay. And we just have to assume that a lot of this stuff is propaganda, and a lot of this stuff we're only seeing what we want to be what needs to be seen. Okay, a need to know basis, right? We just need to assume that. But and the fact that you think that fucking any of these people are telling the truth, that's the shock for me. After everything, fuck me. Anyway, but so what they'll do, but again, they just work into this plausible deniability, but also they work with, so they'll go in and they'll also do tests. So they're always, okay, this is the thing to know as well, is that they're always testing. So they enter the group knowing what the group demographics are, what they're like, what the pain points of the group are. Like they'll know that there are customers who love them but are frustrated because, like various things with support and documentation. And there's certain dynamics in every group that, are repeated and whatever. They'll know that there's people who bought the license and aren't happy, and in every software group there's people that bought it and aren't happy, and there's people who fucking want the world handed. See, one of the big dynamics with something like an advanced plugin where it requires, it's not just a plugin that does everything, it's a plugin that just makes development workflows a lot quicker, and it gives you a graphical user interface so you can code without coding, but you still need to know how to code. So what you get is people landing in these groups who want everything handed to them and want easy answers. And it's like, well, you need to know X, Y, Z, and you need to know the basics. If you know that, then you will be able to use this tool. That's another thing. So there's an emotional component to that too, which is that there's people who want easy answers. These things cause conflict. There's little cracks, little cleavages in every community. Every community has those things, the history, okay? But outside actors, especially with a public group, okay, they will be able to observe and measure that stuff, especially if it's got more than, say, 1,000, you can guarantee that there's people watching this thing, okay, come for election time, or, especially if they're based in Ukraine, it's guaranteed, okay. And so, but what people will do is that, they don't just turn up and troll. Like people, I don't know what people think happens when calling them troll farms is probably a bad idea. Because they mean they're trolling in the sense that they are trying to manipulate or aren't genuine, but they're not necessarily, again, people get confused. Some of these things are called these things on purpose. Like the US government called them troll farms because then that gets to disguise the legitimate disinformation fucking agencies that they, you see, they get, oh, well, we're not trolling, so we're not technically not a troll farm. America loves fucking technicalities, as you know. So technically it means this. Let's just change it. And if it doesn't mean this, let's change the meaning of it anyway, because we own all the fucking media, so we can just decide what words mean. It's good. It's cool. And then we'll just put all the university grads who are fucking idiots deciding that words mean different things. Awesome. Side point. Words mean things. Get new words. Invent new words. Don't redefine old words. So anyway, what you've got is that, they'll join these things and they'll just lay low. They'll stay. They'll look like legitimate members of the community. Like anybody who's done studies or looked into catfishing, for example, like they play the long game. If you're playing a long con, you'd play the long game, right? It's basically catfishing. If you understand what catfishing is, with those women on online dating sites and stuff, where they'll think that they've met someone overseas. And again, it's actually not a bad example, okay, which is this notion where, because a handful of people, again, I can see how this stuff's been weaponized, because I've got friends that I met online when I was a kid that are still my friends, okay? Some of them were kids. I was moderating forums and they were kids, and they were lovely, and they were fans. They were super fans. I think I've mentioned before that Ingrid Michaelson, the singer, was a super fan of Lisa Loeb, right? And I was managing the MySpace at one point. And Ingrid was like super thirsty fan and trying to get Lisa to hear her music and shit. Like, it was funny, but some of these, that's the nature of it. But, like hooking up on MySpace and meeting people online, and many people have met, Freaky Retstar, who was just on this stream and commenting, she met her husband online. Okay, it happens. It's a normal thing. But then bad guys come in, okay, and ruin everyone's ability to trust. And that was another thing that was interesting about the inventing Anna, which was that, it wasn't thought about. This is pretty much how law works, which is that you make a law and a convention and an expectation, you set the bar, Yeah. Okay, there we go. So on IRC, okay, so they met online on IRC, right? It's always happened, right? Yeah, I think you felt the need to clarify that because, yeah, I tell you what, it's a story. I'm going to digress a little bit. Oh, that's, you know what? It's really fucking interesting, this Weimar. I don't know what you're reading. Share it with me, and I've got, because I've done like intensive stuff on pre-Nazi Germany and how it rose, and it's actually quite scary. If you actually, I know you probably know this already, but The Anatomy of Fascism by Robert O. Paxton is a fucking amazing. It's an audiobook. Put it on, listen to it, whatever, while you're doing other things. Fucking, it really does help like you to crystallize. And he was saying that the United States was at risk of fascism before the pandemic, okay, and before Trump, even before Trump, he was saying that this was, a risky scenario. So it's like very, very scary stuff. Anyway, but yeah, so sorry, side point. But yeah, but catfishing, okay. These Facebook groups is really just a modern day version of catfishing where the ask is different. The ask is not to like rip you off of money or whatever, but to use you as a propaganda mule, okay, so that they can change hearts and minds. Because really, in politics, there's a few things you just need to know about politics and how politics works in order to really understand that. And I know that you watch my shit, so you probably know this, but politics and elections are largely fought on nudging sort of 1 to 3% of the people, okay? Change, you don't need huge amounts of people. Same thing with business. You're not going to suddenly increase your market share by 20%. When you're talking about big corporations, like let's say Coke and Pepsi and, other brands of cola and that sort of stuff. Coke and Pepsi, I don't know the actual numbers, so I'm guessing here, right? But, you've got Coke, who has 41% market share, Pepsi, 42% market share. And then you've got, other, with, a mixture of other. Coles, Woolworths, 50% market share, 49% market share, and other, And what they're trying to do is they're not trying to get 100% market share because they don't think that that's realistic, okay? What they're trying to do is get an extra 1% market share, an extra 2%, and pull people just that extra percent because that represents a lot of money, okay? And it's the same thing in politics where every seat, unless you're in a particularly safe seat, but the seats that win elections, especially in Australia, the seats that win elections, okay, are fought on, fractions of a percent, okay? In the Senate, okay, that's where the real power is in the Senate. And in the Senate, okay, the real power, anyway, but the Senate in Australia is the House of Review, and the Senate passes legislation and has a lot more power than you'd think. So, having control of the Senate or balance of power strategically, it falls down to sort of 5 individual senators because you've got Labor and Liberal, and they have, it's roughly depends on, 45, but then that remaining 10% that can actually, give them their 50%. That's how it works. Politics, business, market share, anything like that operates on fractions of a percentage, okay, or just a percentage, okay. And so if you can figure out something that all of that 1% group have in common, okay, that can nudge them in your direction. This is why Scott Morrison's fucking doing this trans thing. He doesn't give a fuck about it. He's doing it because he knows that that's enough to get him his 1% like swing. I think there's going to be a bigger swing than that, but I think that in marginal seats, this could actually be something that tips him in his favour. And again, people don't fucking know how politics works. This is a warning shot. This is a fucking shots fired thing where there's a very good chance that if the ALP don't get their shit together, ScoMo's going to the Liberals are going to win this election somehow. They're going to have to really hate Scott Morrison to undo some of this fucking very savvy political campaigning. I think the ALP are doing the same thing again. I don't know. They don't get it. They don't get it. I don't know. But again, I could be wrong. I just think they don't get it. Anyway, this is what happens when you run the Labor Party out of Sydney and Canberra, with all the fucking people who don't understand issues on the ground. Again, but anyway, I know what people care about. People care about culture wars. You might think it's stupid and beneath you, but they fucking don't. They don't. They're the ones who are talking about this stuff 24/7. But again, this is the stuff where it links to this bullshit and information. Okay, which is what, you know, I had this big fisticuffs with someone on my Facebook about. They're like, oh, I'm going to vote on this. I was like, what? So you're going to vote? You're going to vote for the party that dismantles hospitals, is pro-prison, is who wants to expand the prison system, who fucking hates women, who is on record of most large portions of their party being anti-woman. Listen to Julie Bishop's fucking thing about Liberals' woman problem and all of these things, and you're going to vote because you want to own the wokes on Twitter. Because some fucking narcissist in the UK or the US has fucking decided that it's funny to goad you on Twitter. Way to go. Cool. Okay. I prefer to think that we should have more funding for hospitals so that people aren't in shared wards, so it's not an issue. I also think that we should have more social programs so that women don't end up in prison. I think that it's like, how short-sighted do you have to be? Anyway, short-sighted. Shit's complicated. But if you're voting Liberal, it's a choice. It's not a fucking, your hand's not forced. Anyway, side point. That's another different rant. It's another thing. This is part of my gender critical rant that's probably going to do this week. I just want to make sure that when I go out guns blazing, I'm ready. No one's listening anyway, but whatever. But again, this links to the sharing of bullshit. Like, it's linked to the gender critical stuff, which is that you see people sharing Matt Walsh and sharing Ben Shapiro because they said something that they like, but they're not understanding what the call to action is, which is that these guys are trying to recruit idiots to win the midterms. They're trying to put this perception that the wokes are ending the whole fucking world. Critical theory, critical race theory. Oh, by the way, critical theory, critical race theory, very different things. Critical theory is basically just a broad school of fucking questioning structures. That's it. It's not fucking hard. So if you are opposed to critical theory, you are opposed to asking questions of current structures. Marx sits under critical theory technically, okay, in terms of, not really, he kind of sits like in between. But, I'm just saying, like, a lot of this stuff was inspired by Marxist thought, especially at the international level. Marx sits in critical theory, okay? So, if you are opposed to critical theory, by definition, you're conservative. Because it means that you don't think that the current system needs to be like ground up changed in any way. Okay, so cool. Anyway, critical race theory, different. In the United States, quite a specific, narrow thing. Get your shit together. Gender theory, very different. United States, cult. Insane. Okay, different. Deconstruction. Okay, different school. Anyway, moving on. So that's in my course too, where I explain some of this stuff, and I take Lindsay to fucking task on this shit because it's stupid. It's so stupid. Anyway, so it's just so wrong. The more, you know what's funny? The more that I read about this stuff and get to understand it, okay, the wronger he gets. It's almost embarrassing. So anyway, well, it is embarrassing. Well, it's not embarrassing for him because he's making money. I'm not. So again, it comes back to opinions, okay? Like, people who think that because he makes more money than me and more people agree with him, that he's right. It's like, well, that's not how this works. You're either correct or not correct. I don't care how much money you make and how many followers you have and how many fucking Joe Rogan episodes you do. You're wrong. Anyway, that's embarrassing. So anyway, the reason I don't go too hard, too brutal, is because I happen to love the person who edited that book. So it's like, it's a bit tricky and delicate because, I really have a lot of respect for Iona, right? And Helen, I think, is feeling a bit uncomfortable because I think she has realised that he's wrong. But she can't say so. She needs to say face too. So anyway, I don't know that. I'm not, but that's just, yeah, it's interesting anyway. Interesting to observe that. Side point. So no one cares, Taya, about this. Okay. But again, it's like, I don't know how, I think that maybe a tiny little fucking problem is that most of this stuff can't be distilled into like a little video. But what I can, because again, the information exists if you want it. How to not share disinformation? There's people who say that. Don't do it. Look, pause. think about why you're sharing it. That's the best thing you can do, is to think about your motivation. Am I sharing it? Is there something else I can do to feel like differently without sharing something that I don't know anything about? Think about whether you actually know enough about a topic to be fucking mouthing off on it. Okay, I share 3 things. They're quite broad and complex things, and I apply those 3 things to like broader problems and broader examples. But at the same time, I know 3 things. And I don't talk about Ukraine because I'm only week 1 of my fucking global politics unit. Also, I don't know much about that specific issue. I know about Nazi Germany, and I talk a lot about that. There's things I know a lot about. Legal process. I know about like justice system. I know about how laws are passed, how law works. I know about tech. I know how to build product from the ground up, both from code and design. I know about tech. I also know about changing hearts and minds because persuasion has been the business that I'm in with user experience for my whole career. Persuasion and politics and persuasion are the same thing. Okay, they're the same fucking core thing, which is changing hearts and minds. The medium changes and the application changes, but ultimately people are fairly fucking predictable, especially if you have millions of dollars for a data set, which I do not. I just keep signing up to free trials for things, and I love the Apple burner email fucking thing. It's great. I can just sign up to fucking trials and never have to pay for things. It's great. I think it's only a matter of time before they deny your at iCloud fucking email addresses for trials. Anyway, but I can just create another alias because I've got my own email anyway. So whatever. So anyway, but my point is that, well, what's my point? Do I ever have one? But basically, so it's like, why are you sharing this stuff? Okay, why are you sharing it? What do you get out of it? Be honest with yourself. If you can't be honest with others, at least fucking be honest with yourself about why you're sharing something. I know for a fact that when I'm suffering depression, or I am lonely, or I am stressed, or I am afraid, okay, I share more on Twitter, okay? And that's also the science shows, okay? I'm on Twitter more when I'm anxious, okay? And also I have, like I've said before, I have this, it's a talent, strength. It's good for other people because I'm very good at making people feel like things are going to be okay. Because when things get crazy or when things get insane, I end up calm and in control and able to rationalize and intellectualize and analyze a situation. I'm very clear-headed in a crisis. Okay, that's a good thing. But it can be maladaptive in some ways for me because when I am afraid, this is why people get so drawn to conspiracy theories and get so drawn to, because it gives answers when you're afraid, and it gives answers, when things are uncertain. And there's nothing more uncertain than politics, and also specifically war. There's nothing scarier than war because you don't know what the next move's going to be. You know that, even if you know all about it, you know what the potential moves could be. I mean, if you're in Australia and, living in a naval base that's got nuclear subs, yet the thoughts cross your mind. War is meant to incite terror and fear. That is what war is. That's what war is and does, okay? We need to find a way to deal with that in ways that don't make the problem worse. And that's why when you're sharing stuff, the best thing that you can do to fight someone like Putin, okay, is to not fucking fight. Because he has counted on people being, he has counted on that. Like everyone else who's a bad guy, okay? Now, again, I'm not saying that, I'm saying I think the evidence and the behavior indicates that he is, and the way that Ukrainians have responded to this shows that, he's probably very much in the wrong here. I think it's pretty black and white on who's in the wrong here. And I do respect that the United States, for all my problems with, foreign policy in the United States, they seem to be being careful and trying every diplomatic effort possible. And they're saying, they're kind of saying that this isn't really an option that we want, and they're really, really working hard, despite how much he pushes them. So to the United States government's credit, despite my beefs with, the fucking CIA and all that stuff, they seem to be hesitant to engage in this stuff. But what you should be focusing on is the moves around this stuff, okay? Which is, China's gone pull your head in to Russia, which is a big deal, okay? Pretty much everybody who's not it's actually quite funny. All those people that are pro-pandemic and love themselves a good pandemic seem to be on board with the war. Why is that? Telling the United States government to intervene. Why is that? Shocking. It's almost like they're authoritarians. But I think it's pretty much consensus that nobody wants this war. Like, that's unusual. Usually, even the fucking base in the United States. I mean, okay, here's another side point. Fucking dickheads online. I haven't actually been reading. I just go, fuck it, you're all idiots. And you see like the right-wingers in the US turning around and going, this wouldn't have happened under Trump. Yeah, way to go, dickhead. How about we just stop and have a universal human fucking response without you being a fuckwit and saying that it's all like, turning it into some partisan fucking culture war. Yeah, it probably would have happened under Trump, you fucking fool. I'm actually quite grateful that someone sane is in charge right now. Well, I'm not talking about Biden. I'm talking about the people around Biden. Anyway, side point. But, everyone seems to be fairly on board with this not being something we want, that's a sign of progress. Because if you were around online for September 11th, people were bloodthirsty, man. They were fucking pushing for this shit. And most people, I think, to people's credit, that they're just going, no, we're not doing this thing again. We're not doing this Iraq thing again. We're not doing this again. And also the implications of this are too fucking huge for, we need to do everything possible before going in. And I like that conversation. To America's credit, I'm starting to see glimmers that they might actually be coming back, which is good. They will always work through their shit, but I was worried that they might collapse. But I don't know. They're always on a fucking knife's edge, America. It's why we love them. Anyway. So, but the thing is that it is on a knife's edge, okay? And and what you're sharing I'm not saying that you individually would escalate a war. I'm not saying that. That's silly, okay? It's like saying no one meme is going to cause mass shooting, okay? No one meme is going to fucking, cause someone to become anti-vax. No one tweet is going to incite people, okay? But what it is an ecosystem of bullshit that when someone you trust shares information, you are more likely to trust it and more likely to believe it and more likely to find information. Now, some of the advice around how to tell if something is disinformation or not, which I find very strange from the experts, and also part of the reason why I'm still doing psych and international affairs. I'm an idiot. I'm enrolled in both and I'm doing both. I can't decide which one. I think I need both. But anyway, because fucking hell, university, I forgot how cruisy one unit with a semester is. It's fucking easy compared to the 6-week compacted psych unit. Jesus Christ, that's so fucking cruisy. And I've only got one unit because the international law unit is a trimester unit, so that starts in 2 months. So I've kind of got this, so I'm thinking I might add in the psych. I don't know, whatever. I'll figure it out. I've got a week to decide whether I can handle it or not. I'm thinking not. But that's me. That's a tomorrow problem. Taya has now and not now, and everything not now is not a problem. If there's an assignment due now, I freak out and panic. ADHD, now and not now. There's tomorrow, 5 years from now. They're the same time frame. Just how ADHD works. Anyway, so I'm waffling. But it's just, okay. This wasn't very structured, but I wanted to just mostly whinge, but also fucking moan for a bit
about people sharing and not realizing the impact of what they have. Because what this does, the way that this stuff is designed, is that it uses people that you trust. So when you know what you know about the marketing stuff, okay, when you know about that, the marketing stuff, you know that it's word of mouth marketing, that people tend to turn off their defenses and turn off their switch off their brains when someone either in authority is saying it, when someone with expertise is saying it, or when someone who they trust is saying it. So generally, trust, okay? So, family member, friend. And maybe because my friends and family have always come to me for political stuff, I've always taken it very seriously when I share stuff, when I say something, when I say, when I share something, I think that it's important. And that's why I'm fucking mad at this whole fucking gender critical thing, how they're making me look like a fucking idiot. They're embarrassing me. And with no thought for what I've given up to fucking, defend people like Megan Murphy and stuff, and behaving horribly and, doing everything that everyone said they, anyway, whatever. Okay. Moving on, I'll do that another time. But it's, you think maybe you should take that stuff more seriously. And I think that when you think about journalists and, think about like journalists and the responsibility they have around reporting suicide, okay? Because journalists know about contagion. They know about emotional contagion. They know about social contagion. So that's why when they say, they use certain language, because they also know that those that are suicidal, and if someone kills themselves or jumps in front of a train, that usually if they report it that way, that people will often copycat. Okay, that's something that copycat, same with serial killers or murder or anything like that. That's usually copycats, okay? Because what happens is when the media reports something, someone goes, oh, you can do that? Like, again, coming back to the inventing Anna, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how many attempted fucking, and also like the Fire Festival and those sorts of things, where, how once you see someone attempt it, you go, oh, we can do that. Like monkeys. We are fucking monkeys. We go, oh, yeah. Once they see someone else do it, they go, oh, I can do that. Okay, well, I'm going to try that. That's a human thing. We're social beings, right? And also in terms of social stuff with like a big part of how we connect as humans and feel connected to our community is mimicking how we learn how to operate. Again, I was talking about that identity stuff, is that, you often, this is why personas are very dangerous, internet personas, and making, you're seeing this stuff where people are they've been swallowed whole by their brand and they've lost sight of their humanity and their identity, and they have become their brand. And that's very dangerous. And I've gone through all of this. There was a point where I became my brand, and it became too much. And so now I've actually just learned to integrate those parts of myself, my persona, with me as a person, and show up a bit more and be more vulnerable, and and not be so sort of pseudo angry all the time, because I write better when I'm depressed and angry, because I'm more expressive. But like that unfortunately that's part of that creative thing, which is that the creative process is that sometimes the more self-destructive parts of yourself and the more self-destructive moods are the thing that make great art, and the things that make that sort of thing. But you've got to make sure that you don't like self-destruct in the process. And that's where and I've always struggled with that, because my best writing comes from me fucking being angry, but I try, but that's what the business model does when it's fueled with, when it incentivizes rage and anger and simple answers and easy answers and TLDRs and all of that sort of stuff. You need to start thinking about your own personal contribution to these things, and also this fact of gravity, that people trust you. People who trust you when you share information, even if they don't fucking buy it, okay, the first time, if you share it repetitively, okay, and they trust you, then they're likely to, go further down the rabbit hole or believe you, okay? And that's the thing, is that you've also got things like repetition. Like if someone's repeating the same thing over and 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 over again, it becomes true in people's minds, unless you really, really fight that. Like how many times have I been, like I again, it's that thing where you weigh it up and you go, okay, well, 100 people are saying this and I'm saying this. How you have to be pretty fucking strong in your convictions to come up against that stuff. And it's the same thing with me, and like how on a personal level I struggle with this because, you know, I've had like one of my things when I'm feeling really down is like, you know, like my mum doesn't love me, my sister doesn't love me, my daughter doesn't love me, you know, like people online fucking, you know, I'm the only person with a shrinking fucking audience because I try to, you know, do the right thing. And I go, well, you know, but then there's also this other trope of, well, if everyone around you is the problem, then maybe you're the problem. And I've always got that in the back of my head, always got that in the back of my head, which is it's like, okay, well, maybe I'm the problem. And then you go, no, hang on, no, wait, no, like, okay, this is an anomaly. Like, it's just a situation. And it's like, okay, you get what I'm saying? So the numbers, sometimes when you tend to be, when a self-awareness can be a curse, and also sort of being willing to be like, you know, have the numbers persuade you can often lead you in a path where, you know, like, especially when like algorithms are designed to fucking re-engineer how you think and change your mind constantly, that what you need to, and you know, we're going to sort of constantly keep score of that and go, okay, well, none of my friends are engaging. I go through this. I'm fucking seasoned at internet shit, and it gets to me. I didn't think it did. It does, but you know, when I'm not feeling the best, when I'm fucking stressed and I'm like worried about cash flow and I'm worried about, you know, whether I've made a mistake with all of this fucking, you know, stuff, and whether I should just, because I can't go get clients now because I've been fucking bitching out corporations for fucking 2 years. And like, you know, well, I can, you know, I can always get clients, but then clients, you know, all that stuff. Anyway, but then I've gone, have I wasted 5 years of my life here? You know, have I, you know, whatever. But then I go, okay, well, there was a point where my channel was growing. And then I think it's actually because I think I have to turn the partner program back on. I think that they just fucking don't put you on any fucking recommendations if you're not in the program, which sucks. So I might have to re-enroll in that. But you know, there's a point where I was growing. This is how people, you know, again, you got to sort of think about the reasoning that goes on under the surface, but I bring it to the surface in myself. But most people don't bring these things to the surface and think. Okay, so for me, like when I'm doing, I'm conscious of what's going on, which is that the algorithms are against me. Okay, I've been put on all these lists by association for right and wrong reasons, because I took a side. I care about the issue less than I used to, because, you know, I care about bigger issues that, you know, fix the same issue. But, you know, and it's all against me, okay? I also feel like because I got love bombed by all those fuckwits in the culture wars on the right, and they were all following me, and, you know, I was excited, and, you know, Andrew Doyle followed me, and I worked with the fucking trigonometry guys, con man, by the way, that, you know, I was getting followed by all these people, you know, and it was all cool. And I thought that I was getting momentum and I got patrons and all that sort of stuff. But the second I started actually showing up and being me, I was rejected again. And I suppose that's when you've got that baggage with like your mum not loving you and your sister not loving you, you know, it compounds. So when I say like, you know, but that I'm honest about that baggage, right? Which is that it triggers you, and that's a human thing to do. And I am a master of fucking online behavior, and I still get triggered by that when people fucking don't show up to my streams, when people don't do that, because in your brain, subconsciously, you make a connection, you make there's a relationship there between A and B, A behavior and B behavior, which is A behavior, which is me showing up properly, vulnerably, being truthful, honest, searching for the truth and being rejected, or pretending and being aggressive and talking bullshit and, you know, being larger than life and never fucking wrong and all those sorts of things. And, you know, getting the love. And, you know, I can see that play out just with me, just because I've gone, well, I'm not going to go down that path again. I'm not going to let that happen again. I know where my, priorities are, which is that, but I also know that a lot of people will go in B direction. A lot of people will go with B, which is, I'll just say whatever the fuck I need to, or do whatever I need to do, so that I don't have to fucking be rejected, and I don't have to face the fact that, people don't care what I think, or people don't value my experience, or people don't value me. Like for me, I go, fuck it, whatever, let them be. I have to, okay? That's a coping skill. I've had to self-validate my whole life, because there's not many people who, even my husband thinks my stuff is boring most of the time, because he's not political. It's, he's not interested. But it's just, I'm saying that if the choices are between it's not easy being truthful, ethical, honest, when there's a lot of social pressure and incentives to be the opposite of that. And so, but that's where, taking that responsibility and being aware of that, and making sure that you are sharing things that truly reflect who you are, okay? Or not at all, okay? Because sharing not at all is a really good option. My husband never shares anything. Everyone thinks he's great. I'm wondering whether there's a relationship there, right? He doesn't do that stuff. So it's, I'm just saying the option, there is an option, which is to not do things and to not share, and to really look at why you're sharing stuff, to really consider what you get out of it. And it's not fucking peace. You don't give a shit. Be honest. Be honest about, truly honest about why you're sharing what you're sharing. Like for me, with all of the gender critical stuff, I was sharing that because I would ordinarily not share so much, so frequently. But I felt that there needed to be some sort of correction, because women were being like banned, and there needed to be someone who was out with their, it was all strategic, women with their real name, willing to fucking, implode their career, willing to lose friends, willing to lose family, willing to lose stuff, to make sure that these concerns were heard, okay? That was shat on from a great height, because no one gives a fuck. No one's given me more than, there's only a couple of people, but, every dollar that anyone gave me was withdrawn promptly when I said shit's complicated and you need to fucking compromise. Turns out, I backed the wrong fucking horse. I should have shut up about it. I'm grateful for some of the friends that I made along the way, but at the same time, fucking don't do it. Don't do it. Don't fucking ruin your life talking about issues, about things that because especially when it's a women's issue and as women activists, they don't have your back. They don't. I've been in women's groups my whole life, and it's played out exactly the same way, which is Taya ends up fucking picked on. So anyway, or ignored mostly. The thing is, when you're an annoying person, which I am, but you're also perceptive and you're self-aware, I hear the voice, which is, oh, hi, Taya. Oh, what do you got for me now? Like that. People think you don't know. You can hear it in people's voices. I'm not a fucking idiot. So one of the things about knowing people well is that you can also read nonverbal cues very well. Okay. And even I can read cues when people don't even know that they're giving them. That's how good I am. I can read spillage like a fucking pro. But anyway, so it's just that was again, that inventing Anna. That was an interesting thing as well. Some of the things that were presented there in the subtext was like, yeah, she's good this is where you can use your powers for fucking bad shit. But anyway, so is it bad? I don't know. But it's I've sort of wandered off on a tangent, but what I'm trying to appeal, I don't know what I'm trying to do here. I just haven't streamed in a while, and I just wanted to get some shit off my chest, but also about how thinking about these I might write, actually, I think I'm going to write something. Streams are where I just riff and I come up with ideas and talk roughly around the topic, as you know, and then I'll add it to the queue of things I've got to write when I finish my website. But this one's sort of more evergreen. which is good. So I can sit on it. But and it's in the course, so I just got to pull it together. But it's thinking about why rules are in place for journalists and media figures and celebrities. Why do people have media training? Why do people, business leaders spend so much money on sales training? Why do they spend so much money on these things? It's because they're important, because knowledge matters, skill matters, and saying the right thing. Like, this is where people don't understand that not saying something is an option, first of all. But also, like in policy, not having a policy is a policy. But it's also, so not having an opinion is an opinion. So you could actually not say something and go, okay, well, I don't know. It's too complicated. I'm going to sit this one out. I'm going to listen. I did that with the George Floyd thing. Okay, I went, I'm going to listen. Okay, I don't know this. I don't understand this. I'm going to pretend that I don't. I've worked on the ground in welfare. I understand, race relations from an Indigenous perspective, but I only understand it from the perspective of the white kid. I don't understand it. I can empathise, and I know enough that I know more than most. Okay. I also, am the child of, a Romani woman who grew up in my grandma grew up in Magdalen Laundry when she was younger. And so I understand what it's like to be, I can empathise and I can like imprint and transplant some of those stories to be able to understand, but I can't really understand. Okay. And it's the same thing with Ukraine. We don't know what it's like to be living under threat of invasion. Like, unless you're swamped by Asians, like, but we don't know what it's like to be living under that constant threat. So if you know that Ukraine, they've been constantly under this threat since the end of the Soviet Union. Like it's been a constant thing. So it's a different fucking thing. You don't know. So shut the fuck up. You don't know. Okay? And even because when you don't know and you shut up, the people that loudly do know in the troll farms can't succeed either, because they become more obvious. When we collectively decide to stop sharing things we don't fucking know anything about and get our fucking emotions in order, okay, we then know that we need to, for those that do that kind of stuff, okay, we know that either they're unwell or have poor control and they might need some help, might need to reach out to them or whatever, or we know who the bad guys are and we fucking this is the thing that is like, well, you stop feeding the problem. Anyway, but I didn't really talk about the actual mechanisms of how these things are taken over, because it can be multiple different things. But usually what they do is they stay as a sort of benign and pretend member of the community up until a certain point where they'll do some sort of, they're always testing, always measuring responses, always measuring what works. If you've looked at the internet research agencies, encyclopedic fucking thing about what works and doesn't work online, you'd be amazed. This was the kind of work that I was doing, written down. I never I never wrote it down into anything like substantial, but this is something that I've always consulted, which is what works and doesn't work, works and doesn't work. And they actually have it written down in a fucking manual, which is amazing. But they're always A/B testing that. A/B test, A/B test, A versus B, A versus B. So what they'll do is they'll take this group and they'll participate in a benign way. But what they'll do is they'll also do positive content, try to make friends, because they're also trying to recruit. They're also trying to get people to share their shit. They're trying to build influence. They're trying to do all of these things that build trust, because once you have their trust, you are more likely to share their bullshit. Okay. So Laurie said, Perth Foodies Facebook group was taken over and then sold off by those who stole it, as it had tens of thousands of subscribers. Exactly. And like, that happens a lot, is that, everyday people get a following, they build an organic following, then they end up neglecting the group. Facebook moderation becomes harder than they thought. Who knew? Because apparently moderation isn't a real fucking job, and which it is. Community management is a fucking, I swear to God, it's really, really hard work. Social media management, hard. Community management, admin, really hard work. Especially if you're managing a large fan community where people tend to be more intense and people tend to be, it's like running large political forums is a fucking nightmare. But, even just celebrity ones, it's really hard. But, yeah. The Compu Global Hyper Meganet Australia New Zealand Facebook group is fucking amazing because somehow they figured out fucking, they're just shitpost. It's just shitposting works great. It's quite a marvel actually. It's quite impressive. How it still exists. People try all the time, but people just go fuck it and then they meme that. It's just so funny. But anyway, there's ways to. It's different again. Anyway, there's a course on this. I actually literally have a course on this stuff, on how different types of groups, how to manage actual flow charts on how to manage a situation, rules and guidelines, governance, all that sort of stuff. It's actually just a Facebook are fucking useless. They don't give a fuck. There's no way of doing it. You can report the group as something. Yeah, I don't know what the fuck's going on with Facebook. I don't know what the fuck is going on. I have to assume that they're just so large and siloed that it's like, like with like Clive Palmer, how everything he does is technically legal because there's no real oversight. Because there's those gaps, those fault lines between the AEC and ACMA and the ACCC, and there's gaps there, and they can't coordinate across agencies. That happens in a corporation as well, where they become so siloed that they can't solve a problem here, and they just don't seem to be thinking that this is a priority, which it really should be. But this is another reason why I've decided to really try to focus more of my energy on reaching influencers, people who run communities, people who run Facebook groups, people who run these things, because I know for a fact that most people are out of their fucking depth when it comes to community management. Because I would actually argue, especially with health communities, this is another thing that I feel strongly about, which is that, if you're talking about like mental illness, that your community is vulnerable. It's not benign. I think Facebook needs to be putting some sort of monitor, not just help files, but if you are running a community, a Facebook health public group, support group, you need to be qualified to do so. Because, or have passed a course, and this is the thing, these courses don't exist. I may actually end up just pitching some of these degrees to fucking universities to see if they can, if I can structure the degree, because it's quite a specific combination of skills that seem to be constantly ignored and lost, because you've got marketers over here who don't give a fuck about the political impact, and you've got political people over here who only care about winning in politics and don't give a fuck about the marketers that are exploiting their fucking these problems. And so we need a cross-disciplinary training. There's not even any real training in this. The only real trainers that I know of are people like, Laurel Papworth and, a few other people. They're training corporations, again, they're not across the politics. They're not across the political impact of these things or the societal impact. So this is where I think we need to come up with, and this is what I'm trying to do, is come up and codify this in some way that I just get my brain into a fucking course somehow and go, a big part of this was actually because I keep jumping between courses because I can't find a degree that covers what I need to cover. One is international relations, but then they decide to not fucking cover any cybersecurity. I don't want to do cybersecurity because, then it's too focused on fucking IT systems. And I don't want to do psychology because it's too medicalized and, all that sort of stuff. And I'm like, okay, so how can I create a new degree? And I was like, okay, I started to write down what my perfect degree was. It's probably more criminology. It's probably actually more like criminology and, cyber, like corruption and stuff. But anyway, side point. But there's no real, I've realized that it's not that I don't fit into any discipline. It's just that there's a new one. And it's a new one that has no real program in place. And I'm thinking that maybe what I could do is through the course and that course structure, maybe pitch that to a university at some point and go, okay, well, let's get, let's create this new degree. Right? Yes, you got internet studies, but even internet studies, it's all fucking culture studies. There's no psychology or law or anything in that. So it's like, okay, you need a lot of, a few different things. So anyway, that's my sort of thing at the moment, which is, working on the course. But it's just, because the course is something I can also sell and consult in, so it's good. But reaching, also making sure that there's those people who run communities who have large platforms, influencers, but even people who influence them in any way, like agencies or provide services. Teachers could probably have something here. You know, there's lots of different applications for this broad theory. So what I'm trying to do is come up with some broad training where the course is tailored to specific things. So like a comedian, you have like, you know, certain historical stuff, theory stuff, and also then a tailor-made module for a comedian and a podcast, right? And then you've got, musicians and stuff, because music fans are very different to comedy fans. Comedy fans tend to be more, so music fans are a lot more parasocial, a lot more emotional, because music has a particular emotional aspect to it that's meaningful and helps people deal with pain. And comedy is different, it works differently. So that's where you have these tailor-made courses for different things, where they go, okay, yes, the overall structure and ethics and responsibility and history and those things are the same, but what you would do is use different case studies for different courses so that it sort of gets, people are interested. So then I can just break off those little things and sell them one-offs to other people as well. So that's kind of the best way to go for me. Because the other thing is that I can't sell digital strategy and do this. And I was like, couldn't quite figure out how they work together. But in this sense, they do, because you need the building blocks in digital strategy to understand the responsibility side of things and what went wrong and how it needs to change and what the myths are and misconceptions around the internet are, and, what best practice is, all that sort of stuff. So that's that crash course in that as well. So you get to be get a marketing course, but also, so it can be as big or as little as you want it to be. So anyway, that's my goal. But just in terms of navigating Facebook process, like there's just no real mechanism in which to do that. Now, I don't know where the fuck the EFA are. Again, we don't have a maybe it needs to be me. I don't know. But the Frontier Group, where the fuck are they? They don't, where the fuck are all these people that are rallying around Facebook's problems, telling Facebook that they need these particular process changes, they need these mechanisms in place, and getting this stuff, happening. Like, there's one thing to say it 5 years ago, but nothing's fucking happening. And Facebook's the solution is that ad library, right? It's like, well, yeah, that assumes they run ads and they're not using Facebook groups and like persuading large groups of people with memes to share it outside of the ad platform. There's no scrutiny on that. So what you need to do is have more education around fucking this stuff. And it's failing because a lot of it's coming from institutions off the back of fucking COVID, where everyone's full of shit. Right? Where asking questions is not allowed and everything is fucking disinformation all of a sudden. And it's like, well, no, hang on a minute. There's a real problem here, and it's not authoritarian to ask someone to fucking learn some shit about what they might be doing. It's also disinformation and misinformation and malinformation is a serious fucking problem, but also propaganda. You can't be teaching, you can't be saying, it's just funny, like all these authorities that are like, oh yeah, we need to fight disinformation, but also everyone we don't like is disinformation. Yeah, you don't. So for me, it's like, okay, well, maybe there's a gap there. I don't know. Maybe I can make fucking some livable money on like trying to like educate people in that sense. I don't know. We'll see how we go. I've been trying to figure out how to fucking live financially for like 5 years now. Tim Pool's doing all right. Maybe I should just not read and say bullshit, and maybe I should just go into the next protest and create TikToks and claim that my authoritarian government is fucking coming after me. That seems to be the way to make money. Seems to be the way to make, get all the clicks and stuff and all the love, which is to be stupid. The more stupid that you are, the more clicks you get, because it's simplistic and because it works that way. Thought terminating cliches work. Bullshit works. Emotional responses work. Also, be aware that when you comment on something on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn, when you reply, you're also sharing it. So when you share, you should be debunking it. It's just like, anyway, that's what the research says that. The research says that, the thing that stops the sharing of fake news is the pause or the doubt or that thing. So people get pissed off with me all the time. I'm annoying. Oh, hi, Taya. How are you? What do you got? Because you know what? I know what works. I know that if I poke the dissonance a little bit, that the rest gets sort of, it can stop the problem. So if someone's sharing bullshit and I respond and I go, that's bullshit, and I use my social capital to save you from being embarrassed and sharing something stupid, okay, especially about COVID and like the border, all that shit. If I intervene, that's why I'm intervening, okay? And that needs to be respected and understood, that if I show up, there's a fucking reason, because I'm busy. I don't fucking do Facebook. Fuck that shit. I only talk about shit that I think is important, because I got too much shit to do. But anyway, just saying. But it's just like, I'm just so frustrated that nobody seems interested in solutions. Everyone just keeps arguing around the problem. Everyone's sharing bullshit uncritically. Nobody's pausing. These products are designed to make it so that you do that with as little friction as possible. And nobody is actually sitting there going, you know what, well, this is how we're going to solve this fucking problem. You need to pull your head in. You need to think about what you're doing, okay? And, like this whole Joe Rogan thing. Yeah, okay, I get that that was unfair, that was unreasonable, that was ridiculous, okay? Remember that guy a week ago? Everyone was mad? Yeah. But he does have a responsibility. But then you've got journalists and people like that just saying the word responsibility and assuming people know what it means, assuming people know what you know, okay? A journalist has actually done an ethics unit and know what that responsibility is and means. To a comedian podcaster who just did it, maybe he doesn't know. Maybe he does. It's probably a media training. But I'm just saying, right, generally speaking, people don't know what you know unless you make a point of, teaching them. Problem is, when people don't know what you know and you try to teach them, they will fucking fight you tooth and nail. That's my life. That's my life. Or they'll just ignore you because, again, there's that confirmation bias and people don't like to be pulled out. But that's where that tackling of, the things that are taken for granted, that's why you really got to work in working in that very thin slice of getting attention, but also telling the truth, but not being glib about the complexity of these issues, but also being succinct, which is my problem. Being on brand, also not having all of the algorithms fucking against you. So please, if you see this, please retweet me. Please share this stuff because it's not getting anywhere. Okay? It's tumbleweeds on my Twitter these days. And I don't know why. And I'm no worse than anybody else. And I don't know what the fuck's going on. It's like they're fucking with me. And again, that's my baggage. Like I said, when your own mother rejects you, you have a lot of fucking baggage around how even your own mother doesn't like you. That fucking comes to the surface a lot, right? It's just, it's one of those things. I'm aware of it. But it's just, I don't think people quite understand what we're up against and what I'm up against. And, how disillusioning it is to have the answers and at least be at the beginning of having, working through it. You've seen me for the last few years. I've been working through these answers. I have the answers. I'm not necessarily very good at camera and I tend to waffle and talk shit and all that sort of stuff, but I'm very good at training and very good at I know my shit, okay? I know what this is and I know how to fix it. I knew who to talk to, who to approach, but I can't reach them anymore. I used to be able to just go, oh yeah, well, I'll just fucking, reply to that person on Twitter. Well, now they won't see my shit. They won't see my reply. I can't even get out of the gate. Or I can hope that the people one of the things that you can do is sort of the people that do follow you, you can, and that they're followed by the person that you'd like to talk to or speak to, that you get them to share your stuff so that maybe through the accident of discovery and the 2-second fucking thing, that, Reg, I just saw that Red retweeted my video. Mostly. Thanks, Red. It says, please share taste content. She talks sense mostly. Mostly come out at night. Mostly. No, but I'm just saying, like, it's actually quite, the thing is that it's sort of demotivating. And it's not, see, the thing is, there's a really fine line between entitlement and, like, feeling like you're owed something just because you stream and whatever, or, there's that. But, it is pretty disillusioning when you see people who aren't good faith and who are only in it for money and only in it for, and they're just wrong. They're wrong, and they're also they know they're wrong, and they're still just doing it for money and stuff. And they get all the love and the clicks and stuff. It does start to feel personal after a while. And I'm not saying that I don't have my own weaknesses, like my tendency to waffle and my tendency to be a bit disorganized. But I'm not so much disorganized in that I know what I've got to do and I know what needs to be done. It's just that I'm one person. I don't have resources. I don't have money. I don't have backing. I don't have, like most of the people that are doing this stuff, they have teams. They have, people that are willing to do editing. They have a team of designers. They will build their website they don't build a website. I just use Substack or whatever, or, but I build my stuff from scratch because it's just a thing that I do because I like to own, the stuff. I prefer to own it. I don't like to be reliant on other people's platforms, mostly because of what we've seen. I mean, it's fucking naive that people are signing up to Substack after everything that's happened with Medium and everything. They're still like, oh yeah, I trust these guys. No, capitalism no. I don't think you understand that if the fucking, anyway. So they just don't know the business side of this stuff, okay? Rumble and Substack, they're not going to be any different. Dave Rubin is fucking running locals, and he's a greedy fuck who he'll sell out anything for fame and like money. I don't trust him for a second. So anyway, yeah, but anyway, but my point is that the way that this stuff is designed is to promote bad actors, dishonest actors, simple answers, okay? I hate the N-word, nuance, okay? But, that's fucking, everyone says that without really appreciating what it means. But it's, nuance doesn't mean bloviating for 9 hours either, Taya. But I'm saying things are complex, and there's different ways of looking at things, different lenses and stuff. But the problem is that the way that this model is that, you've got to either be brand friendly to be turned on, like to in the partner. Obviously, there's some sort of algorithmic punishment for not being enrolled in the YouTube partner program. I've noticed that. But also that there's, I was going to say, but what's against you if you don't have that sort of seed capital? So, and in order to get that capital, you need to be useful. And the things that are most useful right now is bullshit and disinformation and propaganda and tribalism and political shit and or selling lipstick. I have no problem with. I'd rather fucking sell. There's a big thing about the beauty blogging community, which is like declaration of that whether they've been paid. Like for certain products or whatever. So, I lose interest because it just sounds bitchy to me. But, like certain brands of eyeshadow, like she'll go, oh, I recommend this NYX fucking makeup. Is that a good brand? I don't know. But I recommend NYX, and then they go, and she makes it sound like she recommends it, but she's actually, it's undeclared sponsored content. So there's this big thing. It's fine if it's eyeshadow. Who gives a fuck? I think again, much like that, I'm surprised that you're surprised. Okay, when that happens, I'm surprised that people are surprised that everything, that it's gone this way. But when it's political opinions or disinformation or war, when people can actually, it's not just about taking a side and sharing memes like in a war. Like that's always happened. There's always been rallying the fucking, the population into a propaganda spin. That's going to happen. Okay. But what you need to think about on a personal level is what the call to action is, what the outcome is. Okay, what is the outcome of you saying, you know, it's not, even if you're just the sum of like a million whole, okay, like you're just one in a sea of a million, you're part of it. You're part of it. Okay, and I try to not participate in any of that stuff because I am anti-war in general. And I do not want to, because I know how the system works and I know how the incentives are. Anybody who acknowledges or talks about this war feeds the incentive. You know, like the algorithms love it. They love the war. You can see. Well, for some reason, they love the war on Twitter and Jason Momoa and Lisa Bonet's marriage. Equal. Absolutely equal in terms of my attention and priority. I think that's what's happening Twitter. Cool. I can't see how. See, again, I see that as an interface designer, as a user experience designer, and I go, you know what? I see how this is kind of a problem because in my brain, I'm looking at these two things side by side and they are styled and laid out and equal to each other. On a subconscious level, they're considered equal and they're not equal. But it's the same thing with opinions from fucking random assholes and experts. They're given equal weight. And I know that that's where the algorithm is against you, but the problem is that I'm actually a fucking expert. But through various fucking factors, I am not seen as one. And so that's where it's just, you know, whatever. It's just, you know, a lot of those things. Anyway, but yeah, be more mindful. I don't even know if I've made a point about the groups being taken over or anything. But you know, what they'll do is they'll actually they'll test content. It's just get away from this idea that they just turn up, they show up, and it's obvious. Okay, it's more like a catfish where it's a long game and it's a long con. But they'll also test you. So with catfishing, remember how we went back an hour ago to that, which was you know, how they will often do a test first. So they won't take the 100 grand from the lonely lady first because that's too obvious. But what they'll do is they'll go, oh my God, oh fuck, I'm so stressed. My bills, you know, whatever. You know, that's what Tim Pool does this. Oh, I'm going to get banned tomorrow. Yeah, you're not. I know you're not. The algorithm works in your favor. Stop fucking lying. You know, or I could be, you know, or I could be shut down any second. Give me your money so I can. It's like, yeah, fuck off, you can. But you know, it's just you'll see that people do that where they like play victim and people give them money and shit. Anyway, so it's, but the problem is then you get someone who's truthful like me where I go, you know what, I need to make some money because otherwise this is fucking unsustainable. And people go, oh, and you see how there's subtle differences. There's subtle differences and it's very hard to tell. And again, I'm not saying I'm worth it. I'm just saying that's just how it is. But in the land of merit, Tim Pool is more of an expert than me in this stuff. That's where it's backward. But, you know, anyway, so, but, you know, they'll do the loyalty test, they'll do the little test. So they'll do this thing where it's like, it's just incremental. And so what it does is they'll build trust incrementally. This is like, you know, this is, well, long sales strategy. If you're trying to sell to a CEO, it takes a year. If you take if you're working in corporate or at the strategic level or trying to get anything more than a few grand from a corporation, it takes years. It can, you know, you get like, you know, I had someone that I knew was a CIO person, and like basically every Indian like company and stuff, he's like, he'd turn up to things and always win the prizes and always like get bought dinner and all of that sort of stuff, get free tickets to everything because he was a mark. He was like a decision maker. And so like they're always just constantly trying to get the meeting and get the thing, but there's lots of sweeteners involved in that. Like this is just sales. And, you know, that stuff applies in politics as well, which is that eventually, you know, if you've got people that are just sort of stroking your ego, and you know, it removes your defenses and it removes your boundaries, and eventually there is an ask. Okay, so everyone's so focused more on the big ask, but it's this sort of the creeping, like good sales, soft sales is actually quite an art form that often people are blind to, where they don't realize that they're being sold until, you know, sort of a year in. And that's like, it's like a catfishing kind of thing where it's just like, oh, they'll go, oh no, my car broke down, I don't have money for fuel. And then you wire them $20 and oh, that's no big deal, low stakes. But over time, and then you go, oh, thank you, you said, blah, 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 I love you, I love you. And then eventually there's the big ask. Okay, eventually there's the big ask. And the problem is that also mimics a real organic friendship and relationship. Again, that's that inventing anything. It's really fascinating how, it's two sides of the same coin. And that's why when it comes to actually policing it and dealing with it, you need experienced moderators who know how to watch and wait and manage and test. So one thing that I'm good at doing is testing the bots. So if they're a bot or a troll farm, I also happen to know they've got a script, okay? Most people don't know that they've got a script and they can't wander off script. And most people who are a human being will accept complexity or sort of maybe hear a slightly divergent point of view or see, this is probably why I break bots in a way, because just the way that I am, they can't keep up. They can't keep up with my non-linear thinking and, kind of all over the place. Much like sort of dumb people go, fucking, I have no idea what you're all fucking talking about because you're all over the place. But smart people love me. They go, oh yeah, I see, I just go along for the ride. Some people just like going along for the ride. But bots don't go along for the ride. So what I'll do is I'll often throw in a little, like they'll start, like the anti-vax bots were really interesting because they were literally just using arguments back and forth. And, I would just say something that any human would go, yeah, okay, I'll give you that. And then, but this one just went, and I just said something, I can't remember. And then I said, look, I think you're a bot. And then it just started like hurtling abusive gifs at me, like abusive memes and whatever. And I was like, interesting. So like, there's ways to test these things. And that's the kind of stuff that maybe I should teach. Because again, a lot of this is just instinct. I'm not the internet research agency. I don't have a encyclopedia, but I've got it in here, like what works. I know how to break these things and test these things. But also I know how to, there's processes in place where you can have rules. This is what HR do best with this fucking employee conduct loophole. That's why this woke employee conduct loophole is there, because they can basically make it so that they can fire you if they want to fire you. It's why it's why the rules are applied inconsistently. It's because that's not why you're being fired. Okay, they just want to get rid of you for whatever reason. Okay, but it's the same thing with setting rules in a Facebook group, which is that you make sure you've got a certain clause there, which is that I always say that if you're sort of upsetting the culture of the group in a way that affects the group, then you can be banned. There's a few little things like that, right? That you can put in place to make sure that you have some reason, okay? And that's the problem I think with Twitter and Facebook, is that they just do it for no reason. And I'm sorry, but like, we can do whatever we want is not a fucking, that's not a contract. Test that shit in court. It's a matter of time. But there's things that you can do. So when and there's a process that you can follow. There's message templates that you can use. So when you want to reach out and go, okay, all right, I think this person might not be legit, I want to reach out to them and have a conversation. And there's things that you can do to see whether they're legit or not, and go, okay, I think you understand, and make it understood and communicate this stuff clearly in a group as group admin and go, okay, we've got this problem. This is how we deal with it. Be transparent. Transparency is the best thing, but also much like with, like say, like a hostile takeover with a company, one of the best things that you can do to prevent from hostile takeovers in terms of like shareholders and all that sort of stuff is to make sure have employees be shareholders, okay? And so that applies very much, or have the employees buy in to whatever you're doing, because then they've got your back. So with the culture of the group, you need to make sure that you are flat and that you are coachable, that you're transparent, but also this is something with fan communities in particular, when you empower fans to feel like they're going to have that relationship with their favorite celebrity, that they're doing something special, acknowledging that work and acknowledging that and giving them buy-in, that usually is quite protective for the group. They do that. Ben Folds does that well with his Patreon group. He didn't for a while, but I kicked his head, so he's doing a bit better. But like actually acknowledging and keeping morale up and empowering individual people to proactively help moderate the group, because no one person can moderate a big Facebook group, but have the community self-regulate those things, set an expectation, all of that sort of stuff. It becomes a lot easier. And that's why, but also, you can just go, yeah, they broke the rules, and you make sure your rules are tight. Most people just like set up a Facebook group. If this is the difference between, this is, again, it's using like people's weaknesses, capitalism's weaknesses and people's weaknesses, which is that people think that everything's fine. Like everyone, I use the surgeon analogy a lot, right? Which is the surgeon analogy, which is that, most trainee surgeons do gallbladder appendix, gallbladder appendix, gallbladder appendix. Okay, so you could be a surgeon for like a trainee surgeon for a year and feel pretty fucking confident that you can like cut out a gallbladder or an appendix like without any drama. Okay, most people can do that. With a little bit of training, I could probably cut out a gallbladder. Okay, but when shit's bleeding, or when someone's bleeding out, or things are a bit more infected than you thought, or there's a cancer or a tumor nearby, and those things, shit gets hard very quickly, and you need a senior surgeon, you need an expert. Okay, and so that the reason why medical training is what it is because it's not so much about the fucking routine shit, it's about when shit goes wrong and deadly. And it's the same thing, not to obviously they're not the same. Community management is not surgeons, but they do have like quite profound impacts as well, and they can hypothetically lead to harm, like death and stuff like that. Now stop saying they fucking don't. They do. Okay. Anything that has people in it can lead to like, crazy fucking people shit, like war and like fights and shootings and, bullying and all that sort of stuff. They're inherently human platforms, which means humans are involved, which means ugly shit happens. But what you can do is mitigate some of that stuff. But you've got fucking junior surgeons in a politically sensitive time when things are needing, always at risk of bleeding out. And so that's why, this is my frustration with the industry in general, is that people still seem to think that this fucking that community management is a fucking low level job. It's not. It's actually not. It's very, very tricky. Okay, and it's something that it takes a lot of skill. It's not just writing blog posts in a perky tone. That's fucking easy. Okay, but managing a community properly, especially one that's high stakes, or one like, I don't know why any celebrity would, especially white male celebrities, would let anybody inexperienced manage the one thing that could actually destroy them, which is their brand and their it's just so frustrating. I never get this through to people, is how important this is, because everything's great. And this, this is all normalcy bias and, hindsight bias and all these biases, right? That's normal. That's expected. But everything's fine during peacetime. Everything's fine when shit's going fine. Like I said, when it's routine, it's fine. But when things are on the verge of bleeding out, or a bit more complicated, or someone might be like not being forthcoming or honest, that's where shit gets like, needs an experienced person, and it needs experience, and it needs someone with self-awareness and all of the qualities that an experience and knowledge that comes with being able to manage large groups. And so this is where I find it really, really frustrating, because I also happen to know how rare people like me are. And so, because obviously there's a certain skill set that goes with this, which is, you've got to be good at sort of the technical detail stuff, but also zoom out to sort of, bird's eye view strategically. And most of those skills are at odds with each other most of the time. So that's where, anyway, I'm trying my best here. Thank you for sharing my stuff, Red. I very much appreciate it. It would be really cool for the people that do watch me. I know I kind of waffle in these streams, and I haven't done my website, and it's kind of one of those things where it doesn't look done until it's 100% done, and I'm at that 90%, but a lot of it is remaining front end stuff. But I've got all the stuff ready to go. I just got to put in some solid work. But I'm also, like I said, I'm stretched so thin, because as much as I appreciate my patrons, I really, really appreciate my patrons, I do, but it's not enough to live on, and it's definitely not enough to invest the kind of money that I need in terms of, you know, tech. And so it's only just, so I've got to take clients. In order to live, I've got to take clients. Cost of living has doubled. Our rent has gone up, like doubled, like in the last 2 years. It's like, you know, I've got to run clients, but the problem with having clients is that then it's like 12 hours a day, like, of work, because clients are hard work. It's always you're always on, right? So that then takes all of the other time away. So it's just kind of being in that stuck. It's like, well, you know, whatever. But yeah, so if you can, if you know money, people, you have money. I don't like, I find it in poor taste to ask for money, but it would be nice if, well, when you can work out how to give me money on my site. I broke everything. I was migrating things and I gave it a quick eyeball check, went, yeah, it's working, didn't realize all the forms were broken for a week. So I'm rebuilding all the forms and putting them back on. Nearly there. I'm doing that as soon as I get off this stream. But once you figure out, you know, how to give me money, it would be really cool if you can, to be, you know, I just want you to share my stuff. Because I have a feeling that people who want to support me will, and people who want to give me money and fund me will, and I shouldn't have to ask. I think it's sort of, you know, it's there. Because, you know, it's like, well, you can support my work, you know, that's understood. If there's buttons and clear calls to action and a clear design and all that stuff on my website, it won't be a problem. But what I do need is people to share my shit, because the fucking algorithms are way, way against me. Like, I don't know what the fuck's going on. I feel like I've done something wrong. Like, it's crazy, you know, like I'm not, and I haven't even, you know what's weird is that I have less influence and less traction now that I'm being reasonable and not talking trash about the fucking, like, doing all this, like, you know, turf shit. I'm getting less like, it is weird. Like, it is, I've got to say, like, I do, like, because I watch some left-wing YouTubers as well as sort of the right-wing, and the algorithm loves the numbers don't lie. Millions and millions of views on one side, fucking 20K, 50K on the other. Like, it's just, and, you know, obviously Joe Rogan sits in the middle of all of that, but, you know, it's that it's really, it's obvious that inflammatory culture wars shit is the game on YouTube, and I'm trying to not do that. Bad for business, but I've always tried to do the right thing, and I've always been okay. So, but that's okay. But even if I, you know, I can only do so much. I'm just stretched really thin. I'm tired. I'm constantly trying to compete with, you know, trying to figure out the difference between what pays and what's right. And those things seem to be in opposition to each other. And what pays and what doesn't, you know, take all my time, you know. And also it's just situational, you know, like with rents going up and everything like that. You know, you need more money to live, which means you need to work more, which means you have less time, and it becomes a problem, constant problem, right? Hang on, here we go. It becomes a cycle, and unless you, again, this is just one of those things. I call it the poor tax, which is when you're born with no money, you are constantly punished and penalized in different ways throughout your whole life. You're always in debt. You're always, you know, taking a loan, like even in uni, you know, you're always taking a loan out to get studies. Your parents don't pay for stuff. You're always in debt. There's always a debt, and it's always a tax that you pay over and over again. For being born poor, because you just never seem to get that boost or that injection. You pay more for rent. You don't own a house because you don't get the deposit, and because you're in debt. And, you know, it's like all of this sort of stuff. And you get a shitter job because your grades weren't as good because you had to work 2 jobs to get your education. It's just a constant sort of, you know, taxation on being born out of the wrong fucking vagina. Anyway. I love you. I think I'm going to go. I think that's a good way to end it. I'm going to go. I love you. I've streamed way too long today. Sorry. But stay well, and I'll be back. I really want to talk about this gender critical thing. I just want to make sure that I have this wasn't very coherent today. It's always more coherent than I thought. When I'm streaming, I think I'm like rambling and like talking shit. Then I watch it back and I go, yeah, I'm talking shit, but there's some good stuff in there. Anyway, I love you. If you want to become a patron, you can on Patreon. There's a link to it. There's not a link to it. I'm fixing my website today as much as I can. It's my priority today, but I've got to start on a client project as well. So I've got to earn the dollars. Unfortunately, I can't just read the Daily Mail and bullshit and make $1 million. It's just not in me. So turns out shit's complicated. Turns out that, peddling easy answers, turns out that con men are good at sales and good at talking shit and good at, these sorts of things. Turns out there's a lot more money in idiots than there are in smart people. Oh, well. I feel better about it. I don't know. We'll figure it out. I think the course is the thing. I think if I can just get that running at different price points, depending on what you want, we'll see how we go there. Anyway, I love you. Thanks for watching. Thank you for your precious life seconds. Also, the Rapscally checkout works. Just so you know, if you do sign up at some point, it's going to be going to the Rapscally checkout, because that's going to be the central. It's like a single sign-on thing between my website and Rapscally and whatever else that I build, and it just has a single checkout. It's just so much easier for billing, because I invoice through the company anyway, but also because then I can invoice clients through it as well. So it's just fucking easier. I don't do admin, so I suck. But I love you. Thank you. Please share my stuff. I know that it's like, but do say this woman, I'm aware I talk shit. But, so do most people. And I'm not lying. I'm not editing. I'm not, I'm probably more real, because I actually, every time I edit, I go, this strips me of what, I don't know what it is. Okay, I think I just need to get more reach, and it's just the algorithms are not working. There's people who do like this long content. I don't give a shit. My audience are not people who want 15-minute fucking answers. Go to Tim Pool. He's an idiot. He's also wrong, and it's embarrassing and humiliating in the long term for your brand, because no one respects him. Okay? But I like to think that I at least play the long game in terms of respect. It might not be very profitable, but I will always be honest, and I will always admit, my gaps, and I will always learn. And seeing me unedited is a big part of that, and that's why the Joe Rogan thing works really well as well, which is that, when you edit, you lose something. And also there's if you have your brand as honest, and you want your brand to be perceived, first perception to be that you are honest and trustworthy, then editing is the fucking first thing that you shouldn't do. Okay? Which is, so anyway, I'm going to go. I'm sorry for moaning about money. It's just, people just think that this stuff is easy. They think that it's just, and that I do it because I want, I don't know. I know people don't get it. People don't get it, that you can do YouTube because you see it as a necessary platform, but not necessarily be comfortable as a performer, but see it as a necessary medium to get your message out, which is, but also know that just because someone doesn't edit doesn't mean that they don't know what they're talking about or what they're doing, which is that I want the optics, or I am very, very specific. I have a very specific idea of what my brand is and what my brand does and who my brand attracts. And I don't want the fucking 7 top tip fuckwits on my, because they're impatient and they're transactional thinkers. They usually go, oh, I'm going to give you $5 if you give me what I want. I look at the trigonometry fucking guys. Anyway, I don't know bitch about them. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, that another more other people that I helped out that fucking showed their true colours. But I'm just saying, they're quite happy for my advice, but they won't pay for it, right? But they didn't even make good. I said I'll help you if you promote me on your thing, and they never did. They never came good on it. They promoted HelloFresh more than me. So anyway, whatever. So it's just there was that Geordie thing come out there. Comes out every so often. My mum's side of anyway, I'm going to go. Sorry for unloading. I just, I'm going to keep going. It just might not be as regular as I would like, because it's just, at the moment I'm just trying to figure out how to make an income. That's not coming through on my restream. Anyway, fuck. Okay, I can't moderate it. Anyway, I love you. I'm going to go. The bots are a sign. Thank you for your precious life seconds. I'm going to try and come back this week. I really do I actually really enjoy streaming. I'm just not very good at presenting things. But I think that my not editing and not necessarily planning and riffing is something that is more relatable than polished stuff. Like, again, it's not out of nowhere that this stuff comes. I actually just have a certain hypothesis. It might be a naive one. It might be that people only want polished people who are willing to lie to them and give them the sort of comfortable lies, rather than, go with me and appreciate me. Like, I'm open to the idea that I'm a complete fucking narcissist who thinks that I'm more important and more interesting than I am. I'm quite open to that. I often think about that, and I'm my own worst critic, right? I really am. But, I think there's a place for everybody, as long as I can overcome this algorithm problem that I've got. I'm not sure when my fantasy podcast is coming out. I know that she's probably got me for when she's on maternity leave in the queue somewhere. I'm not worried. It is coming. I just don't know when. You'll know when I know. I can't even remember what we talked about, and I've only got one side of the audio. So it's like, I'm going to hear it the first time, and they're editing it and stuff. And I know that the conversation kind of went, I never finished a point, because the thing about when people interview me is that they need to know to be able to pull me back on point. Otherwise I fucking, and so Bridget yes-anded me the whole time, and her and I went off on fucking tangents together, and it was quite funny. It'll be interesting to see what came out of it. I feel sorry for Maggie, who's having to edit the thing. I actually offered to edit it for her to make up for it, but so we'll see what happens. I am doing, don't forget, I'm also doing the Dying by the Sword podcast that will have video and audio. Some of it video where the guest is comfortable, but I don't want to exclude people who are only comfortable with audio. I am going to have famous people on there. All my guests are going to be on Dying by the Sword, and Dying by the Sword is about the internet and people's relationship with the internet, and like the good and the bad and the ugly about the internet, and a little bit about them, how they first got on, some stories, if they've ever been harassed or doxxed or the worst experience or whatever, and try to come to some sort of oh, this thing is great but it's also shit, that kind of double-edged sword of the internet. So that is happening, but I just have too many things going on at once that don't generate income, so I have to focus for a little while on income, because I'm not one of those fucking people who's in the club who will just get money for a podcast. It's just not something that anyone, no one will pay me to write a book. No one will pay me. I might think I'm way more interesting than people do, but the problem is I've just neglected my own brand for so long that I missed the boat a little bit in terms of building influence, because I was building it behind the scenes. So I'm known to certain people for certain things, but building a public brand is hard. So there's not a lot of brand capital attached to my name. And it's like, well, to be able to sell a book, or to be able to do, sell a podcast, or make that generate income, is not really something that people would invest in. Because it's like, well, yeah, okay, another podcast, okay. I couldn't even get people to invest in good tech, let alone my fucking ego projects. So it's just one of those things that it will come. I do have some really cool yeses. Like, some people have said yes, I'll get Bridget on there. I think Ben Burgess has said yes. Actually, watch that. He was on Rogan this week. Really, really, you want a great lefty. Fucking Ben Burgess. I'll have I've got a whole bunch of people that are yes, including people who aren't famous. I want people who aren't famous to talk about their relationship with the internet just as much. So this is what I would like to do. It doesn't have to be live. It can be pre-recorded. I will see how we go. But that is coming. I don't have a team. I can't do all of the things all of the time. And I got to just get my website done. I've got to get a button where people can fucking pay me and help me out first. and a checkout that's functioning, and, you know, a value add. So I've got to have, when I'm promising people have access to the Rapscally sort of social like platform, it needs to be working before I fucking say that they get that. So I can't sell the memberships until that's done, because I'm promising something that needs to be working. You see how it works? And I know that this is the problem with hustle culture, is this whole, you know, there's this idea that you need to, like, you know, pretend and fake it till you make it. Or, you know, like one of the things, you know, like some of those like sales trainer courses, and, you know, people who are marketers and stuff, they say, well, sell the course first and then, like, you know, write it week by week at the last minute and drip feed it. And I'm like, no, because I want my course to make sense and be coherent, and, you know, it to follow a certain structure. And I don't sell things that I can't deliver on. And if this doesn't quite work, or I need more work, I can't, you know, like, people just, there's this whole, it's two different schools of thought, and I'm in the latter, which is that when you're ready to sell, you have to be ready to sell it, and you have to be happy with the product that you put your name behind. Some people are less precious about that and will just sell anything and say anything and sell whatever the fuck, just to you know, they'll promise, they'll make a prompt, but, you know, I'm not, you know, that's really inventing Anna, and also, like, you know, Elizabeth, what's her name, Elizabeth Thanos or whatever, fucking these people. That's where it becomes unstuck, and you don't want that perception that you're selling something and not delivering. I've been in that position where it, you know, I sold a project years ago, and the developer fell through and was bad. And I was accused of, like, selling something that I couldn't deliver on, but it wasn't the case. It was just, you know, a supplier letting me down and not delivering, and I was left holding the fucking bag. And I don't like that situation, because I value my reputation, and I want it to count for something, because the only thing that I do have, I have nothing else. If there's anything else I don't have anything else other than people's trust that I know what I'm talking about and that I'm good at what I do. And when that fails, that's a big part of my identity. A big part of my identity. But anyway, so, you know, it's taking a long time, but I prefer to do things right. Yes, it might be that I'm, you know, that I'm being letting perfect be the enemy of the good. I'm trying to fight that as much as possible. But, you know, I will be sending an invite code to people. Just hit me up. But, you know, if you want to be on the podcast as a guest, I would love to talk to you. It doesn't matter who you are. Doesn't matter who you are. I just want to talk about you and the internet. I'm going to use first names only. And I'll link to you if you need to, if you want me to. But otherwise, I'd prefer it just be first names only, and, you know, it's just a conversation. So, but anyway, that will be a bit more different in tone. It'll be a bit more organized, a bit more structured. But again, you know, in order to achieve that, I need to be better and more organized in my head, because I can't focus my words unless my brain is focused. And in order to focus my brain, I need to fucking have clear lists. This riffing is great, but it's not very good for, you know, anything other than this. So anyway, I hope you're well. Stop sharing bullshit. Okay. Think about why you share what you share. Think about why. What are you getting out of when you comment? What's in your head? Here's a little bit of, like, CBT or ACT therapy, if you're familiar with that. And just observe your thoughts and emotions, and what state you're in when you are engaging with certain things. You become quite aware. And it turns out it's probably not about Ukraine. It's probably not about the war. It's probably not about COVID. Okay. If you're sharing fucking Marilyn Monroe things, we know what that is. That's your ex. If you're sharing selfies of you looking hot, that's your ex. You're going through a breakup. We've been there. Okay? It's all good. It's normal. But just think about it. I love you. Thanks for watching. Thanks for your precious life seconds. And one day give me money, or introduce me to people who can give me an audience that can give me money. Take care, and I'll see you very soon. It'll be this week. Okay. Bye.